Dear XX, love my kitty, 69XX. It's known as paraphilic infantilism. But I'm at least pretty sure by now you know he prefers the term adult baby. Oh yes, I found you out. No, he never locks his phone. And yes, I find your screen name to be in extremely poor taste. Now, you might remember me from chatting. You sent him, me, a message saying, "Are we meeting tonight at the houseboat?" And I, said, "Yeah, what time?" And you said, "Whenever you're ready to come by, baby man." Baby man. Baby man? You know? I cringe. Someone else knows? Then I reread the message and cringe all over again because I can't help but notice your spelling. C-U-M by? That's fucking disgusting. Who spells cum like that? Something else I noticed is that your grammar is pretty bad. I mean, you didn't capitalize anything. You spelled an entire sentence with 5 vowels, and I'm pretty sure night has a G in it. Come on now, really? Look, XX love my kitty, 69XX. I'm not saying you're a bad person. Hell, I'm not even saying I haven't done some kinky shit myself. I spent at least 1 year as an internet dominatrix. I enjoy light bondage and an occasional spanking. Sometimes in my weaker moments, I'm even willing to strap on a set of udders and engage in cow play. But this whole situation begs the question, what's wrong with you? Because I'm assuming you know about me. Because he had to tell you about me, right? I mean, there had to be one time maybe when he looked up at you, his other surrogate mommy suckling out a bottle of warm formula, that he mentioned my name, the name of his girlfriend and life partner of 4 years. There had to be one time when he whispered the name Zoe. Because he loves me. How could he not? I'm fucking adorable. Look, I find all of this highly disturbing, and not because I got a text message from a girl named XX Love My Kitty 69XX who's apparently fucking my boyfriend. But also because maybe that same boyfriend doesn't love me as much as he promised. And also because I'm baffled that our society allows people to be as D-U-M-B as you are. But I'm disturbed. Shocked, really. That there are at least 2 girls in this town who are willing to pretend my boyfriend is a 5'9", 178-pound baby. 2 girls are willing to go to the medical supply store on the outskirts of town and pick up extra large diapers. 2 girls are willing to lie to the sales clerk and say, "Oh yeah, grandma's not doing too well. Her Crohn's disease is acting something awful this week." 2 girls are willing to mix formula in a microwave, put it in a bottle, and feed it to him. And at least one of those 2 girls are willing to powder his nether regions before doing it froggy style at a houseboat. Oh yes, XX Love My Kitty 69XX. I saw the email about froggy style. What kind of hell of a town is this? I mean, whose reality am I living in? Why do you have a houseboat? And shit, why don't I have a fucking houseboat? Are the men in this town really that unattractive that my adult baby boyfriend is a catch? Christ, seriously? How is that even possible? How did he find someone willing to do for him what I do? And even so, why was he looking? Why would he keep coming to you knowing I was willing to do anything for him? Even if you do what I do, even if you do it better. How could he do this to me? What do you have that I don't have? Huh? What?
Miss Kathleen Sullivan, you may not know this, but Passover is a very sacred time of year for the Jews. It's the time of year when family and friends are joined together to celebrate when we as a people were freed by the goodness of God. It is a time of year when we make and eat the spiritual and symbolic food which sustained us in the desert as we wandered 40 long years, desperate and yearning for our promised land. The homeland from which we were exiled, only to be enslaved by the cruelest of pharaohs. It is a time of year when we give thanks that we are oppressed no longer, that we are now a free people, that we are a people strengthened by our diaspora, that we are a people made to absorb and to change the culture of the lands, all the while never losing ourselves, our God, our culture, our traditions. Maybe the reason you don't understand this is because your people have never been enslaved, have they, Kathleen? Catholic people? Have they been scattered across the globe or systematically killed by the thousands? Or what about the Irish people? Have they been starved or driven out of their beloved countryside? Have they been forced to move to a harsher and new land, discriminated against, called terrible things, made to work horrible, back-breaking jobs just in order to feed their families? Now, I'm no history buff, but I'm pretty sure the answer to that question is a resounding no. Everybody loves the Irish. They always have. I think it's their accents. Anyway, my point is I almost can't blame you for ruining the Seder I took days preparing. The one I slave over so I could celebrate the joy of triumphant liberation with my grandchildren. The one where my husband reads from the same Haggadah that my mother gave us for a wedding gift. God rest her soul. I almost can't blame you because you probably didn't know how important it was to me. I mean, how could you? Looking at you, you seem to be, 15 years old? You probably don't even know how to spell Haggadah. I bet you don't even know what a Seder is. You're used to Easter with pastels and giant rabbits, which I never understood personally. Thing is, how were you to know that my husband was going to tell everyone about you at my Seder, as opposed to waiting for any other time? How could you have controlled the clinking of his fork against the copper wine goblet that came over with my grandfather when he first came to America? What could you have done to stop him from raising a toast to the love of his life, whom he recently met on Staten Island at a dental hygienist job fair? What could you have done to stop him from telling everyone, including my children, my grandchildren, and even that terrible girl my grandson brought home from college, that you were his beshert or soulmate? Because I'm sure you don't speak Yiddish. And that he was divorcing me so he could marry you. What could you have done? Nothing. Not a thing, Kathleen. I don't remember much about that last conversation with my husband. My daughter said I fainted after he left. But what I do remember is that when I came to, I was surrounded by people, my family. It was in that moment of utter humiliation that I realized the only one who abandoned me was my husband. Not my children, not my grandchildren, not even that terrible girl. Even though I was alone for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't by myself. So I got up, and we continued on with dinner as if nothing happened. Nothing had changed. And then after dinner, we got drunk as families sometimes do. And we talked about what a little tramp you must be and what an ass my husband is. Because he is. One giant ass. But he's your ass now, Kathleen Sullivan. Mazel tov!
Dear Trevor, I am a good Christian girl. I am.
I promise. I read the Bible, I pray for the sick, I vote Republican, and I go to church every Sunday. Sometimes I even go on Wednesdays when I'm not at the gym.
I am so Christian, in fact, that I married a TV preacher.
A hot TV preacher with his thick, wavy, dark hair, blue eyes, dashing smile. I sometimes imagine if I could go back in time and look in on the Garden of Eden, I would see his likeness reflected in Adam, the first man, the one made in God's own image.
Now all the women in the congregation, they seem to agree with me. They come up to me, take my hand, and say, "Bethany, you are so lucky." And I just smile, gently correcting them. No, dear, I'm blessed. Just blessed. Lord, he is such a handsome man. And a good one, on top of that. In fact, just last year, we went on a mission trip to Africa where he literally built a mud hut with his bare hands and bare chest.
Muscles rippling in the sun, tan skin dripping with earthy, salty sweat. Now, I know it's not right for a woman to lust, but I did.
I lusted mightily for my husband. I simply couldn't help myself. All he had to do was look at me and I was a goner. Lately, though, he seemed a little bit less interested in me.
He'd get home from work and kiss me on the cheek, whereas before he would kiss me firmly on the mouth, letting me know that I was his woman. And I guess bedtime also became something of a chore for him because lace teddies and ruffled purple undies seemed sort of, well, overdone. And although he was always nice about it, I just wasn't getting what my heart was desiring. Then one night, just as I was about to demand physical satisfaction, he turned and asked me if I wouldn't mind. You know. Believe me, I minded. I looked him square in the eye and I said, "Now, Andrew, I love you. I would do anything for you, but what you're asking is just plain sodomy, and we don't sodomize in this house."
I rolled over. I turned out the lights as I felt my needs deflate like a birthday balloon. It wasn't too long after that I first found out about you, Trevor. And at first, it was hard. He told me that he loved you, but that he wanted me to stand by his side. To be his wife and his partner. To love him in spite of his wretchedness. To help him protect what he had worked so hard to build. He begged me for my silence and my fidelity. I told him I needed more time.
I spent all of that afternoon desperately trying to come to terms with my husband's sinfulness by vomiting in the second master bathroom. And as I lay on that cool tile floor, staring up at the fresco we had painted as the two of us as angels in heaven,
I actually thought about leaving.
I was going to leave him, Trevor. Then I did what any girl in my position would do. I drank a box of wine. And then when I finally sobered up, I went home to my mother.
Now, my mama, she doesn't mince words too much, so she just said, I could have told you that man was a homo. And you ain't ever seen those ice cream colored clothes of his?
I paused. Well, I thought they were dapper. Well, you've always had bad taste in men and in clothes, apparently.
So I asked her, I said, what do I do? She said, well, I reckon you got two options. You can stay or you can go. And I said, well, I know that, Mama, but what do you think I should do? And she said, honestly, you should do whatever gets you the most money, sweetheart. I decided then and there to take my mother's advice. I was going to do whatever got me the most money. I had an A in accounting in junior college, so I just knew that my math was going to be accurate.
I took into account the following factors: the TV show, the book deal, the public speaking engagements, not to mention our yearly stipend from the church. I also took into account future book deals, television specials, and retreats with us as special guests. As it turns out, my husband as a corporation was worth millions to me, whereas leaving him and potentially destroying his fortune was not
Quite so lucrative.
Besides, I also figure if you two are eventually caught, I'll still probably come out of it all right. I'm the scorned wife of a closeted homosexual TV preacher.
Now that has book deal written all over it.
Besides, Andrew already promised me a new boat and a baby if I stay.
As it turns out, staying with Andrew,
And with you, Trevor, is going to be our best option. But if we're going to share him, we need to work out some kinks first. To start, I get him on all of the major holidays, especially once the new baby comes. These include Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and Independence Day. You can have him on all the ones where there's dress up, like Halloween and Mardi Gras. I know your people like that sort of thing.
I also concede Valentine's if you so desire. I'm just not into it anymore.
Next, you're not to be seen in public together at any time, except for on Halloween or at a masquerade ball, see above, as to not arouse suspicion from the media. You can come to church if you'd like. I'm not going to keep you from the Lord, and the way that man preaches, well, I imagine it'd be damn near impossible to keep you from coming. The word of God drips from his tongue like honey. Next, he can't spend more money on you than he does on me. Also, you need to satisfy him sexually in the way that he likes to be satisfied. I can't satisfy him that way, and I am not even going to try it. I imagine in time he'll be able to make love to me again, even if he thinks about you while he's doing it. That will have to be good enough for me. And finally, if you decide that you no longer love him or can't live this way, we'll pay you a lump sum for your discretion.
I hope that you appreciate that my husband is a good man and a hero to many people. We can't have him going and losing everything just because of where he likes to put his...
I hope that this agreement is good enough for you. I pray that it satisfies you as much as possible.
that it keeps you quiet and mindful of the work that my husband has done for America. And that on some level, it makes you happy even. Because I'd like to think at least one of us is a little bit happy.
Stephanie. sometimes I'll be watching the news or reading a book and someone, usually a man, will say something like, "We attempted to besiege the castle, sir, but their fortress was impregnable." Or, "We tried to convert the people, sir, but the beliefs of the natives is impregnable." Or my favorite, "True courage is a result of reasoning, but a brave mind is always impregnable." Like they know what impregnable is. Like you know what impregnable is. You know what's impregnable, Stephanie? Me. I'm fucking impregnable. In fact, let me tell you just how impregnable I am. 3 miscarriages, 2 ectopic pregnancies, followed by the cauterization of my fallopian tubes. Yes, they had to burn my tube shut. That's how fucking impregnable I am. Now, I come from a huge family, and I'm not talking about 2.5 kid suburban bullshit huge. I'm talking about huge. I'm talking about family reunions where you don't know everybody. I'm talking about 8 different shades of lipstick on your cheeks from your aunt kissing you when you visited grandma's house for Christmas huge. I'm talking 2 full roster teams when we had our annual Thanksgiving Day flag football game. Get it, Stephanie? Huge. The women in my family were built for babies, and I didn't think I was any different. Why would I be different? Why would God make me different? But after enough trial and error, after enough loss, I knew I was different. I knew that it was going to be difficult for me to even get pregnant, let alone carry a baby to term. So I did what anybody in my family would do if they found that they couldn't have a baby. I prayed. And I'm not talking going to church on Sundays, nibbling on a wafer, asking God if he wouldn't mind giving me a baby praying. I'm talking about praying. I'm talking about having people lay hands on my empty belly praying. I'm talking about joining an infertility group and prayer circle that met at Denny's on Tuesday nights praying. I'm talking about rededicating myself every month, just in case God didn't think I was praying enough praying. I prayed so much that every breath I took was a prayer. My God was vast, infinite. I saw God in a badly designed waiting room with uncomfortable chairs, or in an ugly exam room, even in a pipette, holding my most precious assets. I put all my hopes into medicine because I had seen real miracles there. But my miracle didn't happen. And now it never will. Ever since the day I was willed newly sterilized from the hospital, I've tried to reconcile my belief in God and my belief in prayer and in the power of medicine with this gaping hole in my existence, my childless existence. And let me tell you, Stephanie, it has not been easy. Nights awake, crying on my husband's strong shoulders, sitting in an empty room, now an office, where during my first cautionary pregnancy, I had the walls painted a sky blue. Good for a boy or a girl. I became so focused on what I was missing that I didn't see what I had done to my marriage and what you were doing with my husband. Did he ever tell you how he told me, Stephanie? How he sat me down at dinner at our restaurant and whispered, "I have something to tell you." Oh. And I knew he was leaving me. He whispered, "You're gonna hate me." "No," I said. "No." "You won't forgive me." "No," I said. "No. I have to. Stop. Stop. I'm gonna be a father." Whew. I didn't see that one coming. "Did you hear me?" he said, "Sheila, I'm gonna be a father. I'm sorry." But I'd heard him very clearly, and I had already begun to pray. I couldn't pray for you to lose the baby or for my husband to want to come back to me. Instead, I prayed that the baby you were to bear would be the size of a watermelon. And I'm not talking about a sweet, dainty, seedless little watermelon that you buy at the grocery store watermelon. I'm talking about at least 10 pounds, 25 inches, making you as fat as Oprah in the 90s. Only to have you push it out of your exhausted body, making your lips the size of dog ears, making you wide enough for a Mack truck to go through. Then I stopped for a moment and I prayed that its size would reflect its health, that this baby would have the healthiest set of lungs to scream for you, and a healthy sense of defiance to make its childhood and adolescence extra hard for you both. And I looked up at him through my tears and the beating of my broken heart. Sheila, he said, are you all right? I said I was, and I was praying. He rolled his eyes. I said, I'm praying for your baby. His face softened. Thank you, he said. Thank you. And then he grasped my hands and started softly sobbing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next few days came and went, and most of the time I prayed for your baby. And then finally I stopped praying for you and started praying for me. For strength, for courage, for an impregnable spirit to support this impregnable body. After all these years of unanswered prayers, miraculously, amazingly, I felt strong and brave and completely unbreakable. And finally, my miracle came in the form of a phone call from our mutual mother-in-law. She told me that you had twins. And that they were very big and very healthy, and you were very, very tired. But not as tired as you're going to be. Maybe God was listening after all. Yes.
Looking back, Patricia, I think my first clue that our marriage wasn't going to work probably should have been his rampant cocaine habit. Might have been that, I don't know. I guess it could have been the DUIs too, or maybe the lack of a driver's license or decent credit or a job. Might have been the felony charges. It's hard to say. All I know is these are easy things to overlook. I mean, what did I know about cocaine? I always thought this town was too small for street drugs. And as for the DUIs, well, those were a mistake. Youthful indiscretion, he said. Besides, he was already in AA when I met him, so I thought that was a good sign. Showed real promise. The lack of a driver's license had to do with the DUIs, so I couldn't really hold that against him twice. Bad credit was a result of no credit. I mean, who was going to give this guy a credit card, right? Especially with no job. And as for the felony charges, well, those were a surprise up until after the wedding. Yep. Pete was just one of those guys trouble followed, and I'm one of those girls who follows trouble. So I spent long days and nights trying to get him to come around to being the marrying kind, to be the man who spends his days looking for a job instead justify my relationships and jewelry, but eventually walking around in my fat stomach felt a little embarrassing without the ring. It's not so much that I was ashamed of myself or of my daughter, but of Pete for not loving us enough to get sober, get a job, get a house in a good part of town. I bought the ring because I was tired of making excuses for a man that wasn't worth making excuses for. Someday, I want to give that ring to my daughter so I can lie to her. So I can tell her that her father was a good man who made a mistake, that he loved her enough, loved us enough to promise us forever, and even if he was too sick to keep it, he gave us this ring to remember a promise by. I think she deserves at least that, considering she'll probably never know the man. If you don't send the ring back, I'll assume you sold it for blow, which would be pretty standard for Pete. But I want you to know that it'd be too bad, really, if you'd done that. Some guys around town have been asking lots of questions about you too. And if you're getting this letter, I know where you are. I know because the last time Pete and I took a vacation, we were secretly laying low where you folks are now. So far, you've been lucky. My delicate condition has made me a bit forgetful when, say, approached by a scary guy in a hoodie who hangs out by the 7-Eleven. But my guess is if that ring doesn't show up in about a week, my memory's gonna start getting real clear. You know what I mean. Hopefully you know what I mean, Patricia.
Oh, Pilar. I know your English leaves something to be desired, so just try to stay with me, okay? Wonderful. Now, I've given this a lot of thought, and I have decided that I don't care if she calls you Mama every once in a while. In fact, the women from my mother's group say it's normal for children to attach to people like you, the people who provide for their most basic needs. The feeding, the diapering, the comforting. But as children get older and their need for physical comfort gives way to their need for emotional and financial support, the one they cling to, the one they rely on, is their real mother. As nannies fade into their memories like wallpaper on childhood bedrooms. When Rebecca's old enough, she will see that you are not a mother to her. You are a servant to her family. One unwashed window, one missed soccer practice, one missing piece of silverware away from deportation. So you see, it's totally fine with me if she calls you that. Totalmente bien, even. Because you are not her mother. You're her nanny. You work for Mama. Pilar, I like to think that we've welcomed you in. Accepted you into our home, allowed you to stay with us. We've given you a room, Sundays off, Christmas bonuses, sick days. We've even let you relax poolside when we're not home. Now, we don't let the gardener do that. All we ask is that you do as you're told. Is that too much? Because apparently it has become something of a hassle for you. When you came to me the other night, in tears, covered in those bruises, telling me that my husband had been touching you, what was I supposed to say? My husband touches you. What am I supposed to do about it? I can't control my husband. I can't quell his desire for the tenderness of a woman. I don't get to determine, as the years go by, who he loves or
for whom he lusts.
I merely accept the fact that sometimes the woman that fills that void is someone like you. A sad, doughy-eyed thing with a convenient proximity to his penis. Perhaps you should feel flattered. The way he looks at you, I practically feel him harden the dead air between us. And while he admires your distant, unattainable sexualidad, I am left completely and utterly alone.
So there. He's touching you. He's touching you. Of course he's touching you. He's touched everyone except for me since Rebecca was born. Now, I'll admit, I haven't been the same since. Not in body, anyway. And the parts of me that were once beautiful to the eye, to the fingers, to the mouth,
are now only vaguely recognizable to myself. It's natural that over time he had to find other bodies to seek those softest of womanly places.
So you see, it's not his fault. It's mine. I haven't looked right in my own body in years. This is something you wouldn't understand, even if I said it in Spanish. Right now you are young, and you are beautiful. Not like I was not 10 years ago when my husband left his first wife to make me his bride. Now, I can imagine that you're still quite uncomfortable, and that this place does not feel like a home to you. Perhaps it never did. And now you're telling me that you're leaving. What could I possibly do to make things better? Should I say that I sympathize with you? That I should leave too? That my husband's a dog? How about this? It might make you feel better to know that he does not love you. He does not want to make you his new wife. He does not want to make you a real part of this family. And though things are hard right now, I promise it won't last beyond his next romantic conquest. Someday, and probably very soon, you'll be just like me, completely ignored. So maybe you can consider staying for Rebecca. I think, and I could be very, very wrong, that she might love you. The way that children love their mothers, you know, that unconditional, heartsick way that children love their mothers. And because of that, I have to ask you to consider this. I know dignity has no price, but maybe the happiness of my daughter does. And hopefully this is it.
Maureen Pender. What the fuck are you doing in my house? I leave town for 1 week. 1 week. And I come home to find your underwear in my hamper, your soap in my shower, your boots in my closet, and your crappy country music on my coffee table. You creepily cleaned the fridge. You did my laundry. It looks like you may have vacuumed the rugs and dusted the mantle. If I didn't find this so fucking weird, I would say you were Martha Stewart. A picture of domestic goddessness. But it is fucking weird because you are 18 years old. Shouldn't you be out seeing a movie with your friends? Or planning what you're going to take in college? Or, I don't know, doing your goddamn homework for once in your life? Because that's what I would be doing. If I were, I don't know, say a high school senior? Look, I let you walk our dog because, as your teacher, I wanted to help you out. Let you earn a little extra cash before you went off to college. I mean, God knows no one else would hire you. You're a sweet girl, but not motivated. Pretty, not popular, and from what I can tell, your parents are assholes. So I thought I could provide a positive influence in what I am sure was a formative and probably tumultuous time for you. And you know what? Maybe I did. Of course, this was all before you came to know Malcolm. In all the ways you have come to know him, both behind my back and in front of my nose. Which shouldn't have shocked me, really. I mean, what could be more attractive to a selfish man than a beautiful girl with everything to lose and no self-esteem whatsoever? No big surprises there. What is surprising, even to me, is that now you're telling me you love each other? Really? Fine, you know what? You want him, you can have him. I do have one last lesson to teach you, though, before I am out of your life forever. Before my name is just a faraway murmur on your lips before the time before you. Plural. I want to teach you one last lesson. And given the circumstances, it may be the only thing I ever taught you worth a damn. So, I should tell you before you get too involved in this affair of yours that no matter how much you clean the house or make yourself a soft pillow for his body or handkerchief for his tears, soon you will only be good for one thing. And that one thing is pork chops. Now, my pork chops are something I kind of pride myself on, and I wouldn't give this recipe to just about anyone. But he is sort of fond of them, so to speak. Or shall I say he requires them often. So I'm going to do you a massive favor, and I'm going to tell you how to make them so that when you have nothing left to talk about and no physical chemistry left whatsoever, and you're sitting on the couch looking into his eyes and you can feel him slipping from your tenuous grasp, you can make these and he'll smile. And he'll remember why he fell in love with me and translate that to you. So, here's how you do it. You take pork chops, raw ones, and you put them on a plate. You add salt and pepper, and then you fry them in butter. 3 minutes on each side, maybe 4, depending on the thickness. That's it. Nothing to it. But if you're feeling really ambitious and you feel like making a meal that might warrant a marriage proposal, I wouldn't recommend it. He's not good at them. You might try making fettuccine alfredo as a side dish. Now, fettuccine is a bit harder as it involves boiling water. So, what you do is you take some water and you put it on a stovetop in a pot until it boils. Then you add in the noodles. While they're doing their noodle thing, it's about 9 to 10 noodle minutes. You fry some garlic and shallots in a pan. When that's about done, the noodles should be ready, and you take them out, strain them, and put them to the side. Now, in the pot where you originally cooked the noodles, you're going to add 2 parts cream to 1 part Parmesan cheese and some more butter, and then you mix it all up until it's a nice sauce. Then you add in the shallots and the garlic, some salt, some pepper, a little bit of nutmeg. Come to think of it, I don't know if he likes nutmeg or not. But if you do, and you might, go ahead and add some for yourself. You are, after all, the one cooking dinner. Now, when that's a nice cheesy blend, go ahead, add back in the noodles, mix it all up, and then put it on a plate next to the pork chops. And I promise you, he will promise to love you. Until the world runs out of pigs.
Tiffany Renee Hoyt. If I ever see you, I'm gonna put a meat cleaver right between your eyes. Not really. Because I'm actually gonna rip into your stomach with my bare hands, twisting my fingers around your intestines and pulling them out and wrapping them around your throat. Maybe then, if you're still gasping for air, I'll put what's left of your insides in your mouth so you can taste your own shit. I don't reckon you've ever eaten shit, have you, Tiffany Renee? You see, there was this one time, just this one time, the dog had an accident in the house on the carpet. Beige carpet. New beige carpet. After I begged Chris for hardwood. Hardwood's too expensive, is what Chris told me. The dog got into the garbage, ate a half a dozen raw eggs, post-dated, some coffee grounds, maybe some paper, and he shit all over that new beige carpet. Before I even remembered that I left the garbage pail on the kitchen floor. So I get home from work, I park the car, I put my key in the door, open it, pushing it open with my knee, holding a small bag of groceries, new eggs, a purse. And then the smell hit me. Like a ton of bricks, it hit me. I looked down, and there was shit everywhere. I found the dog under the dining room table, and I wail on him for a while, mostly out of fear. He knows what I'm in for, so he forgives me for leaving the garbage pail on the kitchen floor, for making him so sick that he couldn't wait for me to let him out, for beating him so bad that he couldn't stand. But I had to stop because I gotta think. So before I get real scared, I go under the kitchen sink, I get a bucket, I get some water, and I start scrubbing. I scrub until my hands are raw with blood and lye soap that I made myself. And hardly any time has passed before I hear a click. And the door open. And a creak. And the creak sounds like a gunshot. I freeze. I stop. Breathe in. I stop hearing the footsteps on the new beige carpet. You see, Tiffany Renee, there wasn't enough time to clean. There wasn't enough time to get the mess up off the floor, and that was the first time, the only time that I ever tasted shit. And that shit was mixed with blood in my mouth from coughing and salt from the tears and sweat falling down my face. The kind of sweat you only sweat when you know the last taste you'll have in your mouth is waste, and the tears you only cry when you are begging Jesus to forgive you for beating the dog so bad. There was only one other time it was ever worse for me. And that was the time that he got home from being with you. He never did hide you like a decent man might. He would wave you around in front of me like an American flag on Independence Day. There was pictures of you in his desk drawer, notes from you in his wallet. And after a night of being with you, he'd come in the front door smelling like you, with a mark of your kiss on his neck and your name on his lips, and he'd look at me, disappointed. I'd have dinner waiting for him in the oven, and the house would be mostly spotless, and sometimes I'd do my hair and put on lip gloss, and he'd still look at me, disappointed. I felt like dying, Tiffany Renee. really did. I think I died once every minute on every day I was with him, and probably twice a minute on the days he was with you. And after all I've been through, and after all he's done, for him to look at me, disgusted after being with you, is more than any woman can bear. So, I don't suppose I can be any clearer or any more upfront when I tell you that if I see you, the things that I'm gonna do to you ain't gonna be pleasant. They're gonna hurt you. They're gonna make you wish you were dead. And then I'm gonna do you the biggest favor of all. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you, Tiffany, Renee, in the most painful way I can think of. But I want you to remember, through your pain and bloody screams and your tearful pleas and your broken sobs, that what I'm doing for you is a favor. Because if you stay with him, if you replace me, you'll die a lot more often than that.
I was going to go more traditional, but I decided, as usual, to follow my heart. So I picked this one. It's not quite white, but I always thought white made me look sick or pale or just generally yucky. And he liked it, Lila. He did. He liked the way it hugged the curves of my figure, the way the sparkly things, the beading, the way it sparkled in the light at the reception hall. And I'm pretty sure he liked it best, at least I think he liked it best, when he unbuttoned it, button by button, down the back of my trembling body in our honeymoon suite, while our guests downstairs danced the night away. I think he liked this dress best as a billowing pile of lace and white beauty, just gently laying on a hardwood floor. We heard the music playing softly downstairs as we climbed into bed, and he held my cold hands, and pressing his lips to my neck. "It's okay," he said. "I love you." Tried to comfort his nervous bride as I lie beneath him for the very first time. Looking back on it, nervous isn't the word I would use for someone who waited until their wedding night. Stupid might be the word. Naive is another good choice. Bleeding, maybe? I wasn't nervous. I was in awe. I had waited my whole life for that moment. A moment that intensified our relationship, solidifying our commitment to one another in a delicate exchange of bodily fluids. It was supposed to be magic. I personally envisioned rose petals and fireworks. But instead, as everyone said it might be, it wound up being sort of awkward. Which was fine. And the months that followed, that silly awkwardness was replaced with tender affections. Evenings spent trying to figure out the other's body turned into mornings, relaxing comfortably, with entwined fingers and legs, wasteful dewy kisses, matured into the deep, passionate embrace of tongue and breath and lips. That led once more to unawkward, tender affecting. Our bed was our own private fort. It became a sanctuary of body and mind. I told him my secrets and my fears, and he named our first 3 unborn children. I spent many lazy hours with my head on his chest, just listening contentedly to the sound of his softly beating heart. And I was never happier in my whole life than I was in the moments that we wasted there, in the feminine bed that I adorned with soft pink sheets. For it was between them that we forged a bond, wrought of iron. You might ask then why I'm writing you this letter. Why I'm not ensconced in the arms of my beloved, courting his fantasies of wife and lover. Why the bond of iron has become like the soft gold of our wedding bands, worn away by brutal time. Lila, at this reunion of yours, he saw you dance, as though time had stopped, crystallizing you at 16 and himself barely 17. And in a moment of nostalgic bliss, he took your cool, dry hands and remembered how good it felt to twirl you in his arms. And though he's only admitted to one shameful kiss, one moment of lapsed character or judgment, I know that it gave way to painful fantasies of alternate lives, alternate realities in which you were his loving spouse. And I was merely a pretty girl he saw in a grocery store that one time. The tears stung like shards of glass, cutting through my watery eyes as I asked him what he'd done. And wickedly, he said he thought maybe, and only for a moment, that he'd made a mistake, that he'd chosen the wrong woman for his bride. But he regretted it. Can't you see, he said. You're all I ever wanted. It's natural to doubt and to question. I love you, he said. You're all I ever wanted. But by then it was too late. The damage had been done. As I crawled into bed that night, lost in a sea of blankets, I waited for him. I waited for him to join me in our safest place. I waited for him to fill the space between my body and the emptiness that surrounded it. But he slept on the couch that night. And in the morning, he was gone. He left a note. Call me when you're ready. I never did. Living with knowing that after all we'd been through together, after the time spent lying helplessly in his loving arms, planning a life and a future that did not involve him ever questioning the choice he made when he chose me for his mate. Knowing that he ever thought of leaving me, or that he made some terrible mistake, makes me unable to continue. Tuesday, Lila, is mine and Charlie's 5th wedding anniversary. I will not be there to celebrate.
My dearest June, I met Harold for the first time on a Friday evening in 1951 at a USO dance, organized by my big sister Clara. Her husband Edward was a career naval airman, and she'd roped me into hostessing a canteen dance for a group of boys going to Korea. I was only 16 at the time, much more interested in baseball than a bunch of rowdy, desperate teenagers in uniform. But my mother figured it might be a good chance for her peculiar daughter to get out of the house. Usually on Fridays, I'd listen to baseball on the radio with my dad. We were lifelong Brooklyn Dodger fans, which wound up breaking our hearts a few short years later. So when we couldn't be at the park, we were at the kitchen table listening intently to every broadcast. I knew all the stats, and I oughta. After all, my dad had been quizzing me since I was 6, and by the time I was 12, I knew everything there was to know about the Dodgers. We'd be at a game or a party, or even at the coffee reception after Mass, and he'd say something like, "Hey, Peaches, what was the batting average of Pee Wee Reese in 1947? And I'd think for a minute, 284. The crowd of guys he called over would hoot and cheer, and my dad would laugh. After 6 girls, my dad finally had a buddy. Lost in a sea of ribbons and curls, high heels and lipstick, he had someone to relate to. Though he loved us all, he spent lots of time with me. One summer, he taught me to throw and to catch, and he even taught me how to hit my cousin Mikey's tough curveball. The dance was nothing special, to say the least, with the schmaltzy music, stars and stripes, crepe paper decorations, and crumbly cookies. It was certainly not something I would have missed my weekly date with my dad and the Dodgers for. Content to ladle punch into cups and stare at the clock, I passed the time wondering if Newcomb was going to pitch a no-hitter that night. He'd had a good year so far, one that wound up being his best ever with 164 strikeouts. I didn't even notice Harold looking at me until he came up to the table. "You want to dance, Harriet?" he asked, reading my name tag. "No," I told him. "Come on, sweetheart, I'm going to war. I might die." I stared him down. "Fine," I said, "but that excuse only works once." He laughed. "I'm not kidding you," I said. All right, I'm not that bad a guy. You'll see," he promised. That's what they all say. But the two of us danced under the dim lights of the Knights of Columbus Hall, my hands on his shoulders and his on my hips. He told me all about his family in Brooklyn, his dog Rex, and his big brothers who fought in World War II. I probably couldn't have been less interested in anything he had to say until suddenly he goosed me, just to make sure I was paying attention. I squealed, and he grinned at me with his Cheshire cat teeth. "You awake there, sweetheart?" That was when I slapped him across the mouth and walked out. I was a lady, after all. As it turned out, his father worked with mine, much to my embarrassment. And the next time I laid eyes on Harold was 2 years later on Long Island, where my father's company was hosting a Labor Day picnic for employees and their families. Harold was home from Korea and tagged along with his folks. He didn't recognize me, but that big-mouthed father of his caught me out of the corner of his eye at the goddamn punch bowl. And he said, "Hey, isn't that Give 'em Hell Harriet?" Give 'em Hell Harriet was my nickname after the dance. It was the height of the Truman administration, and everyone thought that it was very clever. "Yeah, that's her," he said. He was dressed in his uniform. "With an arm like yours," he said, "you should play in the softball game this afternoon." As a matter of fact, smartass, I'm pitching. And I did. I knocked his smart ass to the ground with the ball, but immediately after I whacked him, I was so overcome with guilt, I rushed to his side and I yelled at him, "God damn it, Harold, you had to crowd the plate." He fell in love with me right then, June. And although I'm sure it was because of my nerve or my temper and maybe my sense of humor, I bet it didn't hurt that my measurements were 37, 23, and 36, just like Marilyn Monroe. We saw each other every day after that. And eventually he asked, "Give him hell, Harriet," to be his girl. He had to ask 4 times before I finally accepted. And when I did, I realized I loved him. I loved him with everything I had. Naturally, this isn't easy for me. To leave him here alone. I just didn't have much choice in the matter. When it all started a few years ago, I thought I could take care of him. It was only occasional issues. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with gentle reminders. I would leave sticky notes on the stove. "Don't forget to turn off the stove." And on the door, "Please shut door." In the bathroom, "Please turn off faucet." But soon the words stopped making sense to him. And then eventually the world stopped making sense to him. He began to lose the world. And when he lost his world, I lost him. That was when I found this place. It's clean, it's quiet. The visiting hours are unlimited for immediate families, so I've been able to join him every day for as long as we wanted to. We would sit, hold hands in the sunroom and talk about our day. His eyes would light up when I would visit and I'd kiss him. Like I still do. I kiss him on the forehead. Harold Angel. That's what I call him. It's corny, I know, so shoot me. But lately, he's been forgetting me. My kisses, though welcomed, have become foreign. My visits, though frequent, are now punctuated with the pain of loss and confusion. And I admit, it's harder now that I've been noticing that he's become rather fond of you. I'll come in sometimes when you don't know I'm there, and I'll watch you from another room. I notice that occasionally you'll fondly hold his hand or exchange fond and loving glances. The orderlies say that that's normal, that he doesn't remember that he has a wife and that he's seeking companionship. The last time I was there, I couldn't help myself. I had to talk to you. I had to tell you that this was my husband and that you can't have him, June, you can't. I've loved this man for 57 years. 58 in August. And I've cared for this man every day of my life, and I don't know how not to care for him. I went over to you both, and Harold smiled his familiar smile and said, "Oh, June, this is, and he looked up at me And he said, "This is my friend." Reluctantly, I extended my hand to you. You shook it demurely. As I told you, my name was Harriet. And in a moment of recognition that was all too brief, Harold looked at me and said, "Give him hell, Harriet." Harold beamed with pride at the distant memory of my name. And you nodded, politely. I'll admit you are very polite. The two of you went right back to talking as I sat in the recliner, adjacent to your love seat. You told him about your children, and he told you about his big brother, got the Purple Heart at Normandy, about how brave he was. Your eyes glistened. He was so pleased at how interested you were. And through the fog of his disease, I saw a flicker of light that was the man I married. The young man, handsome in his uniform, so proud, so damn cheeky, and so eager to impress a pretty girl. That was when I realized he loved you. Oh, and not the same way he loved me, and not better than he loved me. But he did love you. He loved you, and he wanted you to be his companion. I resigned myself to this that day. And in my resignation, I went home and wrote a brief but comprehensive list that I have included for you here. It has a few things on it that you should know about Harold, my husband of 57 years. 58 in August. 1, Harold never liked to talk about his war. He lost friends and unit members, and I think he always secretly felt like no matter what he did there, it never would have been as good or as brave or as heroic as what his brothers did in World War II. So do him a favor, June. Listen to the war stories about his brothers, but never make him tell you his. 2, Harold lately seems to like his meals in the afternoon. Waffles are a new favorite. He likes them with syrup and whipped cream, if you can manage it. 3, Harold wakes up at night. He feels lost most of the time, and he wants to walk until he finds where he's supposed to go. The doctors call it sundowning. I call it itchy foot. The nurses will probably have to handle this, but if you do stay in the same room and one night you wake up alone, I don't want you to be afraid like I was. And I'm sure he's safe here. With you. 4, he's terribly afraid of bugs, palmettos especially, but he'll never tell you. He's too proud. Everything else, June, you just find out on your own. You'll find out in the times you spend talking, whispering love through hearing aids, gazing at each other through thick prescription lenses, all while I look on like I do every day in another room. Occasionally interrupting to kiss my Harold on the forehead, just to let him know I was there. Because
because I was there. Sincerely, give him hell, Harriet.